Let's talk to Steve Crawshaw, Director of Policy and Advocacy at Freedom from Torture. Steve, good evening to you. I'm not really sure why we're talking to you, because I'm not talking about anybody being tortured.
Well, I think you may be, actually. I was interested to hear you say just now how, we've got all these criminals coming in. What we actually know from past experience is that many of the people who are taking these appalling risks, and you say it is very dangerous, clearly, are often fleeing the worst of the worst things in Syria,
from France,
Iran, and places like that.
Really? I mean, I know people don't like garlic very much in this country. I personally love it, but there's nothing much more disturbing than that in France, surely.
Well, I mean, there's this idea somehow that everything always belongs to everyone else. Everything.
He's frozen. Why would he freeze in my presence? Amy's going to unfreeze him, and Amy will bring him back to us in a moment. Hold on, Steve. We'll get back to you in a minute.
They're not fleeing to save their lives, though, are they? I mean,
well, no, but let's wait.
That's what you should say to him when we get him back. All right? Say that to him.
Okay, well, I'll do that. But they don't look. Yeah, we'll wait. We'll wait till we get him back. We'll wait till
they're in danger.
Oh, there we are. We got you back, Steve. Sorry, I think there's problem with thunderstorms in certain parts of the country.
It's the big freeze. It's the big freeze. It's always terrifying. So I don't know if you got any of that. But what I was just saying was, you were saying, is it really torture? And I was saying, absolutely. I mean, people are not taking this risk for no reason. People who've fled repression, fled torture, Iran, Syria, the places like this.
They're in France.
Then they need to, something needs to be done. And obviously, if there were other great ways, you talked about doing it in the normal way. I really wish, we wish that could be done more easily. But what the truth is, it's obstacle and obstacle and obstacle, and people are absolutely desperate. They do, of course, have to show once they got here why they're here, and broadly, what they do show, those people who have taken the risks, is unsurprising that those are also the ones who have gone through the worst of the worst. Someone who Priti Patel honoured just a couple of years ago as an absolute UN global hero, an Afghan-born doctor, Wahid Aryan. The way that he arrived would be something that he would be jailed for now and sent straight back to dangerous. It was then Taliban Afghanistan at the time that he was doing it. And of course, Taliban is again very strong now. So I think that we do want everybody to be stepping up. Of course, the French are taking lots. The Germans have taken lots. All the other European countries have taken lots. But just because we're at the end of the line, it's not like, okay, stop somewhere else.
But what you're saying is not true factually, is it? They're not fleeing torture from France, are they? They're in fact endangering their lives and other people's lives, and children have died, have drowned there.
It's not a matter of fleeing France. It's a matter of where they started from. And to answer your question,
they're not fleeing from their lives, are they? Once they go through the whole of Europe.
They have absolutely been fleeing for their lives.
From France? Why would they be fleeing from their lives, Steve, from France?
Well, you're kind of pitching that everyone needs to end up somewhere else. Obviously, if we're the island, then unless you kind of come in on a business class flight to Heathrow, which is not the way life works, you aren't able to do that in any kind of way, then you would have been travelling elsewhere.
Steve, just wait a minute, Steve. Wait a minute.
But there's reasons, therefore, why you'd end up in the UK.
Steve,
family, friends,
Steve, can I?
They chose to
just a minute, Ash. Steve. Now, you're on the programme to talk about this. You are the Director of Policy and Advocacy at Freedom from Torture. Nobody coming over in those boats in the last few days, and I live near there. They're young men, basically, young men in their 20s, 30s, maybe even a little older. They're coming over here. They look reasonably fit when they've got off the boats. They're not fleeing any terror in France. This is a small island. We have left, I'm so glad we've left the European Union, and the majority of people in this country, if you were to ask them, don't want any more people coming into this country illegally. They are like burglars coming into your house, Mr. Crawshaw, and you should surely be talking against it.
It's funny you say that. I mean, actually, the polling shows the opposite, that the majority of people in this
country... Can we not talk about polling on this programme? Because polling doesn't show anything. Polling is just something that people want.
It tells us things.
No,
it tells us more than just...
It doesn't tell you anything.
You said yourself they choose to come here, because their family are here or they like it here. I mean, it's not really a lot. They're fleeing. They want to come here out of choice. It's not a fleeing their life situation.
Back at the starting point, I mean, so the largest number of people coming across the channel is from Iran. Horrific situation.
Don't forget the starting point. Yeah, they've passed that along, so it's gone, the starting point. They're in the safe land. They've been through about 5 safe countries.
But do we need to define it so that every other country has to
Yes, we do.
Well, that
Be
is the law,
generous,
isn't
but
it?
not us. We've always said we wanted to be generous. So my colleague, for example, I mean,
No, we don't want to be generous anymore, Mr. Crawshaw. We've been generous enough, generous to a fault.
Except when you actually meet the people who've been through this, I know that you would say it differently. So my colleague...
I have met people, and I'm not saying it differently. No, because if
he's been honoured by the Queen. I'll just finish.
I don't care.
He was honoured by the Queen.
This has got nothing to do with it. Doesn't matter.
If he were to come to this country now,
doesn't matter.
He would be locked up.
Doesn't matter.
So why is the person who's been honoured by the Queen not allowed to flee torture?
He's perfectly allowed to get out, and he's perfectly allowed to apply to come to this country legally. A lot of people come here legally, and we love those people come here.
Lots of people who get honoured by the Queen go to prison.
No,
I mean, that happens.
I'm sure you know that. Actually, it's tiny numbers who...
Hello?
If they were to increase the numbers and to make it possible, would be absolutely great. But the fact is that organised things, there will always be people who are simply fleeing for their lives and have different circumstances.
But these are not people who are fleeing for their lives. These are people who can afford to pay thousands of pounds to people smugglers to get over here, and we are being too soft. We should tell the French we're not taking any more, and we should have our patrol boats out in the Channel, and we should send them back without any more fuss.
I think it's the least British thing I can think of to suggest that everybody else needs to...
You're not talking for me, Mr. Crawshaw. Who do you think you're talking for? Who are you talking for?
I think I'm talking for the majority. I mean, that's absolutely clear. Everything shows that the majority of Britons wish to be decent and compassionate.
Only the people you talk to.
But this isn't decent and compassionate, these people.
Well, I know you don't like polling, but it's the only scientific thing that we have.
Polling is not scientific, by the way. There's nothing scientific about polling. That's a ridiculous thing to say.
I hear that you don't like it, but it's as scientific as we've got.
It's not scientific.
People are asked and they give a very clear response. And I think, to be honest, leaving aside the polling, I think that's instinctive to all of us. We know perfectly well that people are instinctively generous. If they see somebody suffering, they want to step up. So the argument you're making is these people are not really suffering. And I've no idea how you reach that conclusion.
Because they're in France and Italy and all through Europe. They're not suffering.
I've actually been to the coast and watched some of these people coming out of the boat because I live near there. And I've actually seen how fit they seem to be. When were you last around Dover and the south coast when they came ashore?
Yeah, I mean,
when were you last at the coast and saw them coming ashore? No, you haven't been, have you?
Yeah, but
you haven't been.
When you last talk to somebody who's described to you, I have been, yes. More to the point is that you yourself, I feel, have never talked to any of the people who have made those
Don't patronise me, Mr. Crawshaw.
I have talked to people who...
I don't like being patronised by people like you. It annoys me intensely.
I've talked to people who flee for their lives, and they don't care where they go. The first country they get and they're free, they're over the moon. That's what real people who are fleeing for their lives think.
These people are not fleeing for their
lives. Why not?
You don't go, I don't like France. I'm still not quite satisfied that I've escaped torture. I'll just go on this boat. And
I'm interested in how the British Secretary has herself said that Britain to be generous, and at the same time, we are not taking nearly the same number that others are taking. So I'm not sure where we get this idea that we ought somehow to be exceptional, that other people would, if you like, show the sympathy, show the empathy, do things with others, but we shouldn't. That seems an odd principle.
Well, you're changing your thing. You're now changing your whole point on why we should accept them now.
What do I change? And I've always said that if these are people, if they're not...
You're sort of accepting they're not being tortured now, aren't you?
So let me just get this right. So Freedom from Torture, your organisation, Freedom from Torture, okay, the organisation you are the director of policy for, you are advocating that people break the law and break into this country. That's what your charity does. Is that right?
We don't advocate we break the law. Britain helped to shape a UN refugee convention.
Forget the UN.
I promise you I'm answering your question.
Forget the UN.
I promised I'm answering your question. So Britain helped to shape, forget the UN. Britain helped to shape an agreement 70 years ago, realising how bad were the failures of the 1930s, and said, what matters is not have you got a piece of paper before you arrive. It's absolutely explicit. The agreement that Britain helped shape was like, we need to work out, do people have a reason? Are they genuinely fleeing things which are really bad? We need to interrogate that.
Which they
and
aren't.
That's the bit. And if they, well, you're making a decision of the British government. The British government can make that decision because their decision making which itself is problematic.
I can solve this problem easily. This is the way we solve it because I have to take a break. We solve it by asking the France if we could rent a little bit of ground over there. We put together a holding station and people go there and explain why they think they should come to Britain. It's dead simple. They don't have to risk their lives in boats. They don't have to pay people traffickers thousands and thousands of pounds, and then we decide whether they have a legal reason or whether we would want them in this country, and they don't have to break in, because at the moment the people who are coming here in their boats landing on our shores are basically invaders, are they not? What a terrible place to freeze. We'll let him come back and respond to that.
I don't know if you can hear me now.
I can hear you now, sir.
You can hear now, very good. All I would say is that so I could hear some of what you just said now, and it's startling to hear the Home Secretary and other Home Office ministers saying this is all completely legal, everything they're doing. They know perfectly well it's not. They've signed up for things which allow people to arrive here, and then the decisions are taken about whether they can stay or not. But the idea that there's a right and a wrong living is against all the agreements that Britain has ever set up, creating these two.
I'm afraid we're all right. Steve Crawshaw, thank you very much indeed, sir. We're going to have to leave it there. Your line is appalling. He's Director of Policy and Advocacy at the Freedom from Torture charity. I'd like to know what you think about this. I'm not being hard. I'm just flipping fed up with the amount of people who seem to think it is perfectly okay to come into this country illegally, when so many people are trying to apply to come into this country